Are you ready?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studios, this is the Steve Malzberg Show. Be a part of the action by calling 855-777-9660. That's 855-777-9660. Or email Steve at malzbergshow@newsmax.com. Here is Steve Malzberg.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Steve Malzberg Show. We have news breaking out all over the place, including the release of the suspect who was arrested in the ricin incident, where letters were sent to the Senate and to President Obama and to a particular senator. So he's been released. We're going to let you know why that happened. We also have a story that the older terrorist brother who's dead, and you know I refer to them as the terrorist brothers. I don't even want to say their names, probably because I can't pronounce them. He's a suspect in a 2011 triple murder that took place on 9/11/2011. So we'll talk about that. We also have new poll numbers on George W. Bush, which I might ask our first guest about. And we say hello to the great Pat Buchanan. Hey, Pat, how are you, sir?
Doing fine, Steve. How are you?
Good. Welcome back. I appreciate it very much. And, of course, let us talk about your column in a second. Your column, which piqued my interest just by the title alone, that was on WND, and it was Did the Brothers Tarznev Fail? And we'll get to that. But I want you to hear something. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I had Alan Dershowitz on yesterday. I asked him a question, which Newsbusters picked up, and then Rush actually led his show with it today. And I want you to weigh on this, what I consider to be just horrific hypocrisy by the left. Let's listen to what Rush had to say.
Professor Dershowitz was on a television show on Newsmax hosted by our good buddy Steve Malzberg. And Dershowitz pointed out the hypocrisy that he hears. He talked to the point we made here that Kathy Bowden, or Bowden, however you pronounce her name, a murderer, a terrorist, domestic terrorist in the same vein as Bill Ayers, now teaching at Columbia. Angela Davis, well-known terrorist, distinguished career teaching. Ayers and his wife. Dershowitz, these are all people who were terrorists. So Malzberg said, well, would you agree there's no difference between them and this kid, Joe Kartsanayev? And Dershowitz said, well, they're much worse because they're much better educated.
You know, no questions were ever asked significantly to Obama with his relationship with Ayers. Robert Redford made a movie about the Weather Underground. He goes on with Stephanopoulos before the Boston bombing and says he was a fan of theirs, violence and all, because sometimes you need violence. I mean, there is no difference between what they did and what these brothers did. If anything, they were worse.
Well, my view would be this atrocity, the Boston Marathon Massacre. That's in the same league with Timothy McVeigh, and it's not up there with 9/11, Steve. But it is, I think, the most successful act of terrorism against the United States, I think, since 9/11, certainly, and one of the worst in my life. I don't know that Ayers killed anybody himself. I think he set off a bomb when I'm a contemporary of his, at the Pentagon and maybe at the Capitol at midnight or 4 a.m., I don't know that he killed anyone.
Well, no, there was a police officer who was killed in a bomb in San Francisco. Originally, they thought it was him, but then it was some Black Panthers that were supposedly involved in his group.
The Panthers were killers.
And they bombed. Look, the fact of the matter is, we have a president who hung around and has a close relationship with a man who set off bombs, including at the Pentagon. I mean, that's just blatant hypocrisy.
Well, it's undeniable, and you and Rush got an excellent point. These people are brought back and laundered up and cleaned up, and they all seem to wind up in academia, as valued professors who can tell us their experiences. I think Kathy Boudin, and I'm not certain of this, was involved with much, much more serious acts of terrorism in which people were killed.
Yeah, that was the Brinks robbery, I believe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got cops killed in that.
Yeah.
And those people ought to be in jail the rest of their lives.
And Angela Davis too was involved with in getting people away where cops were killed.
Was involved with that kid, that kid that But they blow the head off that judge.
Yeah.
Out there in California. I remember those days well, you know. It was a real time of violence and murder, and people were condoning it, you know. I mean, I remember old Hubert Humphrey, and he wasn't a bad man. He said, you know, if I lived in those conditions, I'd lead a pretty good riot myself.
But hey, Pat,
let's hung that around his neck, Steve, the entire campaign.
Yes, yes. Now, and don't forget the FALN. I have Joe Connor coming up later in the show. His father was killed in the Franz's Tavern bombing, and of course Eric Holder went to those bomb makers and said, "Don't you want to get out of prison?"
Well, look, I will say this: the left, there is an old stating, "Pas d'ennemi à la gauche." My French isn't that good, but it is no enemies on the left.
Right.
And the left has always felt that way, that they go out and reach, you know, that the communists basically, what do they call them, liberals in a hurry?
Yeah. That's a good one. All right, Pat, let's talk about let's bring it up to Boston and the piece that you wrote, which was linked on Drudge and has gotten a lot of comments. These brothers, what they tried to accomplish. What do you think they tried to accomplish?
I think they wanted to capture the attention of the nation and the world. They wanted to create a horrendous act and wound the United States. They wanted to immortalize themselves as terrorists. And I think in a lot of ways they succeeded. And I was stunned, I have to say, when I saw Deval Patrick come out and say we're going to have a lockdown of the entire city of Boston and Cambridge and Newton and Watertown and places like that. It told me, I mean, we're letting these people succeed in intimidating us. And I think for 5 days, these terrorists succeeded. Obviously, one of them went to their death, and the other's probably headed there, although my guess is he's going to trade his information for life without parole. But I'm afraid that around the world there must be terrorists, Al-Qaeda types, and others who said, good heavens, look what those guys did. Now, Steve, you noticed in that column, I woke up that next morning after Boston, and I read a website on bombings around the world, and you know there had been something like 40 bombings and shootings in Baghdad, in Iraq, and something like 75 people killed and 380 wounded. That didn't get a fraction of the attention that these two characters got.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're talking to Pat Buchanan here on the Steve Malzberg Show. So where are we headed? I mean, you know, the left is tiptoeing around the motive. We all know what the motive was. We all know the motive was jihad. Even according to reports, the brother in the hospital says that the older brother was radicalized here. He was radicalized on the computer. I don't know if I believe all that.
Let me talk to that, Steve.
Yeah.
You know, because I was talking to Greta Van Susteren, who's a buddy of mine. I was on Sean last night, and I was talking to Greta. It's still, look, these guys are Chechens. They're Muslims. The older one was a militant Muslim. I don't know what the younger kid is. But it's still, and the older brother really was disgusted with the promiscuity of America and the alcohol and all this. But I don't see the connection between that and that hatred and setting off a bomb at the Boston Marathon. I mean, if a guy blew up some pornographic movie theater, I would understand it. But what is the connection? See, this is what I haven't been able to discern, is how you connect killing people who are running in a very innocent, in every way, sporting event, and people cheering them on in the middle of the afternoon. I mean, it seems to be these are hard-working people, and they're people who have trained and everything. Why did they do that? And clearly, as I mentioned, they want to make themselves famous and all that. But what is it? I don't see the relation. I could see, I mentioned to others, bin Laden declared war on us, and he hit our economic power center, the Trade Center, Pentagon, and the Capitol, our political and military centers. That's an act of war. I understand why he chose those targets. I find it hard to understand why these guys chose this target. What are they trying to accomplish?
Well, I don't understand why they chose the Boston Marathon other than the notoriety and the magnitude of the event. And as you said, that they want to be famous, et cetera. What drove them to kill, though, because they didn't like our morals, et cetera.
But how does this?
But we're the infidels. See, depending on to what degree he was radicalized, depending on
those runners aren't.
No. We're all the infidel. I mean, we're all the bad guys. We're the West. We're kill and you'll go. Did he believe that he's going to go get 72 virgins? I mean, we don't know to what extent.
Well, there's no doubt. Now, this is the point I was making in the column.
Yeah.
This is what bothers me about it. This is a soft target of totally innocent people, and we have not been hit at what we could fairly call a 100% pure soft target like this.
Yep.
And secondly, these guys had the mindset of suicide bombers. They're carrying around those pipe bombs and all their guns, and they're shooting it out with cops. They know there's a high probability they're not going to survive the week. They have to know that, even though they ran away, and they're getting in gunfights and things like that. And if you've got people who say, look, I can get that kind of fame, I'm going to go to paradise because I'm going to die in my cause, and I can make an enormous splash and an explosion and capture the imagination of jihadists all over the world, I think you got an incentive for some of these people, maybe 1/10 of or 1/100th of 1% of the Muslims around the world, but that's an awful lot of people.
Well, I don't know what percent it is, but I just hoping this is not a door. Hoping it's not a door opener, as you're alluding to. Pat, before I let you go, I want to, man, you used to have business with George Bush. Actually, the poll numbers are out on George W. Bush, and I find them very interesting. His library is opening, and I just think people have grown and see him in a different light after, 5 years now, Barack Obama,
Right.
Although I don't know that he could, in an actual election, I'm sure the media would demonize George W. again so much that Obama would win it yet again. But Bush has a 47% approval rating, and he is actually tied with Barack Obama in the approval rating. They got 53% disapprove of his handling of the economy, 43% approve, 73% though disapproved in 2008. So he's picked up about 30 points on the economy. So my point is, time heals all wounds, it seems, and it seems that time has been good so far to George W. Bush, and I got to feel going forward, time will be even better.
Well, it might. I think the historical judgment on George W. Bush, I think, is going to be, if we had to pick one thing, is going to be the Iraq War. And that's what cost the Republican Party both houses of Congress in 2006, and I think helped cause loss of the election to Barack Obama, who had opposed the war. And a lot of people, General Bill Odom, the late head of U.S. intelligence, told me he thought it was the worst strategic mistake the United States ever made. But I think ultimately, to the historians, that's what it's going to be about, Steve. But there is a sense on the part of the American people to soften on presidents. Harry Truman, I can remember when he left office with my father cursing his head off at him. But he was down at 22% below Nixon.
Yeah.
And he's now, they've redeemed him, of course, again, but that's the left taking care of its own. Usually the conservatives, what did the great Whittaker Chambers says? The great failing of conservatives is we don't retrieve our wounded.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Hey, Pat, always a pleasure speaking to you, sir. Thank you.
You take it easy, Steve.
Take care. Pat Buchanan, ladies and gentlemen.